What were some of the major challenges that you faced when you were starting to build trust with those players, make a name for yourself and really establish yourself with the Sea Eagles there?
Um, the biggest thing is getting them to trust you.
Yeah.
As a physiotherapist, you hear a lot of things outside football and what goes on with football and their thoughts and their feelings about different things. And it's generally not to, and then you have to filter out what you think is important and what you need to keep to yourself and what you could sort of pass on, but pass on in a way that doesn't get them into trouble or so forth. It's building a relationship between them and also where the trainers and the coaches trust you to look after them. So that's really important. It's building good, strong relationships. Because once the player believes in what you're doing, they're more likely to adhere to the program and be more diligent, and then you'll get a better result. Okay?
Interesting
And
point you
that's the big
raised.
thing because you have some pretty strong personalities in football, and it can be a bit of a battle.
I guess unlike your private practice physiotherapist, when you're working in elite team sports like this at the highest level, say with the Manly Sea Eagles, there is a lot of pressure likely that comes from not only the coaching staff, the players themselves, and as you kind of touched on a little bit there, the media or the outside influences, that pressure to get players on the paddock to perform, whether it be, a state of origin match coming up or a big match coming up where it's do or die in the semi-finals. There is a lot of pressure on your shoulders. How did you find you managed that during your tenure, and specifically in those early days when you must have been feeling a lot more pressure before you got initial runs on the board?
Oh, it's pretty stressful,
Yeah.
really stressful at times. And in fact, God, your anxiety at times was be awful. I think there's a couple of times where I had to go see a doctor or check myself in because I was getting all this chest tightness. I'm like, what the
Yeah.
hell? And it was big decisions, about getting a player right. You're on cusp of making an 8, and you need to have a player right because they're crucial to the team. You got the coach's pressure, you got the outside fans pressure, and you've got your own pressure, and then you go, no, you've got to look after the player, and you want to get him on the field, but you don't want him breaking down once he's on the field because it's even worse. So it all comes down to you. So yeah, a ton of pressure, and you just have to stick strong and not be overly emotionally swayed
Yeah.
to making the wrong decision. And that can be quite easy to do because you can rush someone back and say, oh, look, I've got him back in time. But if they break down within the first 10, 15, 20 minutes, most heads will turn towards you and say, what? The player will look at you, its coaching staff will look at you. So it's on your head. And you can't always go with the player saying, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. You have to do the test at the end. You set yourself a bunch of protocols, and each box has to be ticked before you make that decision. And then even if they're all ticked, you may not make that decision.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, could be very stressful at times. From the demands from the players, etc. Very stressful. I don't miss that
Do you have
at all.
Do you have any specific situations or instances where you're under particular duress? I know it wouldn't have helped to have someone like Desi. I imagine the Storm players would say the same about Craig Bellamy, but did you ever feel like you're really under the pump at any stage? Was there any particular moments there where you were tearing your hair out trying to get someone back on the paddock?
Um, yeah, Des was interesting, mate. So yes, that let's just say that could be there was that big cloud over you at sometimes, just waiting to throw a lightning bolt at you. So look, there's a couple of instances. Look, and it was one story was in the game. Worst times were in a game and you're at warm up, and a player comes off injured at warm up. That's like the worst case scenario because you have to make a decision on the spot if they're in or they're out, because then they can call the 18th man. And
Yeah.
it's one time, and I forget, we're at Brookvale, and Stephen Bell, I think it's about 10 minutes to go before they're coming in from warm up. Decisions have to be made. He's coming to my calf's gone. And we're like, what? Okay, so we run a whole lot of tests on his calf, the doc and I. I'm like, no, can't find anything. There's nothing wrong. He said, no, it's not right. No, we can't find anything wrong. He's hopping and he's jumping, he's doing all that. So, and Dev's going, oh, give us an answer, what's he doing? He's good, he's going to be good. All right. So out you go. He goes, they all come in by warm up by that stage. We said, right, he's fine to go, So they do their talks and stuff, and then they jog out to the field, and we sit down on the sideline. And the team, the opposition kicks off, and Stephen Bell's the centre, and he's over our side of the field. And he turns and runs because the goal's gone backward. And honestly, he's taken about 10, 12 steps, and he's put his hand up and said, I'm off. And I couldn't find a hole big enough to sit in. He said, my car. So we've lost him, yeah, within the first 5 seconds. And so the whole game, just waiting for the aftermath. And I think at halftime, Des goes, what's by? Said, talk to you after the game. Something like that. And I'm like, oh, fuck, here we go. Here we go. Anyway, we won the game. Thank God we won the game, mate. And we're like, oh, we're sweating. We're like, oh, we don't know. It's looked all good. He's like, it's all right. You know, we won the game. I'm like, oh. So we sent Stephen Bell on MRI that Monday, yeah? And it came back clear. There was nothing wrong. And we're like, what? He ended up training the rest of the week and played the following week. It was just bizarre. But the amount of pressure and how you felt the rest of the game, luckily they won. But yeah.
You're saving grace. They won, and there was nothing wrong on the MRI, eh?
Nothing wrong on the MRI, and he was fine thereafter. Like, had no explanation for it. But watching him turn and run and just put his hand up to the sideline, he just went, no way.
Did Des give you an apology?
What? What was that? I think I got, God, you're fucking lucky. I think I was lucky.
Were you in the change room when he, I don't know who it was against, was it
Parramatta with the door?
And he slammed the door and it fell off. Were you in there?
I was right next to him. So what you saw was Des was spacing. Jamie Lyon was to his left, and just to his right was the strapping bench, and I'm there. And we've heard the tirade, and everyone's just like, just looking away, sort of just biding your time, waiting for it to go. And he sort of stops and he pulls that door off. And he sort of see it just go clunk on Jamie Lyon. He goes like that. We just start laughing. Just start laughing, mate. What else can you do? What are you going to do?
Laugh or cry, eh?
Dodgy Parramatta workmanship, I say. Dodgy Parramatta workmanship. Yeah. And look, we had other instances, you know, Brett Stewart, there was always pressure on to get Brett Stewart on when he was missing. He was like as important as Tommy Turbo is to Manly today. When Brett played, you know, unstoppable.
Yeah.
So he had a number of injuries, and you know, there's a number of battles there to deal with. So always trying to get him on the field as quickly as possible and as safely as possible, because you knew it was important, really important to the team, especially if you'd lost a couple without him. You know.
I guess you're trading a fine line, aren't you, with those players, because they take up such a chunk of your salary cap. I guess it's a little bit different in the days with Brett Stewart and you know, that era that we were very successful in, which we'll talk about. But say in today's era with Tom Trbojevic taking up a large chunk of the salary cap, having him on the sidelines, it is a bit of a trade-off though, isn't it? Because you want to get him back, but you don't want to get him back undercooked, so to speak. Where he's going to injure himself again and spend more time on the sideline. So how do you manage those situations?
So that's right. So yeah, sometimes you do look at the rehab group and say how much of the salary cap is out of the game at the moment. Yeah. And that can be quite substantial, yeah? Fair chunk, especially when you've got those high-end players. And, you know, you always used to say you don't want to keep your Ferraris in the garage.
Yep.
Yeah. So you definitely want them out there, but you've got to realise, and this comes with experience as well, if you push them out too soon, and they only last a game or two, whereas if you keep them out for that other game, you're actually going to be well behind, you know, so you can explain that things. And, you know, I remember having a discussion with Des one time. I think the discussion came, well, he's not ready to, a certain play, he's not ready to play. Well, I want him ready to play. I want to play him this week. So, well, he's not going to make it. He's not going to be ready this week. And it's a tough discussion because, you know, you're going to get a bit of hammering. You know, said, well, I want him to play. Well, I said, well, tell you what, you can tell him he's playing and you can make the decision and I'll step back. You're like, oh, fine, give me out another week. So, you know, because no one wants that responsibility, man. It's a big responsibility
Yeah,
to
yeah.
push someone in when they're not ready. And if it breaks down, so you take responsibility for it. So yes, you just have to put those things aside and think about the players' welfare. Yes, you want them in as soon as possible, but you want them back as quickly as possible, as safely as possible. You know, they might not perform to their absolute best, but you just don't want them getting re-injured out there, and you want them to be able to hold their place. That's the big thing, and be safe out there. And that's who you have to look after first. It's the player, and once you look at them right, then you can talk about putting them into the right scenario.
What would you say were your key attributes? Because I imagine being a physio in the rugby league, NRL, you would have to be very assertive and unwavering in your decision making as well, trusting of your own knowledge and instincts. Is that correct? How would you?
Yeah. A lot of people say it's my charisma and great sense of humor, along with my looks, with my stunning attributes. But I'd actually say you do have to be, and you learn that as you go, and you learn how to believe in yourself. And for me, there was a bit of gut instinct. I mean, we had towards for a classic example was Sean Lane towards his last year at Manly. He was carrying a hamstring strain on scans and stuff. It looked like a hamstring. It was a hamstring strain, but he's getting through trainings without issue, getting through games. And like, you know, if you looked at it and looked at a couple of clinical things, you probably wouldn't play him.
Yeah.
But I managed to get him through games from the last 5 games of the season, and he was enormous. You know, and certain things like that, where that's more like gut instinct. Well, hang on, this is the data, the facts are over here, but I'm seeing this, and it's not adding up. I want to go more with this, and that's where I came back to earlier. You can't always rely on scans to be your beginning and end of everything. Yeah, you got to use them in conjunction with what you're seeing and how they're behaving.
Like not basing your decisions wholly on like metrics, but also talking
Correct.
to the player and getting a feel. Yeah,
Correct. And seeing them and watching them. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. You can't just base it on metrics.
Was there any miraculous recoveries that you saw in your time? I know one that I particularly remember wasn't related to the Sea Eagles, NRL more broadly. You look at some of those big players throughout the years, Cooper Cronk and his return to Game 3 State of Origin in 2014. He returned from I think it was like a fractured forearm within 5 weeks. He made a testament to beetroot juice and coconut water and all that crap. But in reality, yeah, there's these professional players that really do all the 1%ers to get themselves right. Did you see any players like that, and also any instances where you saw recoveries like this that happened in a much shorter time span than you would have predicted?
I think look, you're always battling against the clock here and trying to get there quickly as possible. I think we did a pec tear. I forget the player, but might have been Curtis Sirenen. I think he had a pec rupture plus repair, and he was back at 11 weeks, and he was benching 90% of his previous. He was very close. Brett Stewart's return from his tibial osteotomy surgeries was a miracle in the fact that he was told that he'd never play rugby league again, and then we got him back to the field, given everything that was going on. Look, to where there's been something outstanding recovery like that, no, but we have pushed some boundaries. You know, we've had ACLs come back at about the 5.5 month mark. I think Shane Rodney ruptured his ACL at the beginning of the year, early in the season, and then was back in the semi-finals for the 2011 season, same year, and played a grand final. And got a grand final medal out of it. So there have been those sort of instances, and it comes back to the players doing everything they possibly can, but they're also really well guided now. They have people they're in every day. They've got a rehab trainer or trainer with them going through their program. So there's not a lot of chance left.
Yeah, and one of those you talked about was Brett Stewart, and his particularly troublesome knee injury. The surgeon told Brett that he should find another career. And then come 2011, Sea Eagles take out the Warriors in the Telstra Premiership Grand Final there. How much of a fulfilling moment was that for you as the physio, but also a triumph for Brett and the team?
Oh, it was fantastic achievement. It was awesome. He did swell with pride on that. It was no one had ever taken to the field at that level again with that sort of injury and that sort of surgery, along with the fact that he was going through a number of things at the time, including his court case, and he had diabetes, so that inhibits the healing. And it was all very new. Then we had to trial different things with that injury. I remember, he was that big tibial wedge was taken out of him, and then he was in a brace. He could only cycle, and he had to cycle X amount of hours a day. So, we set up a reclining cycle at his house, and got him a recumbent cycle, and he was sitting there, and he'd do like 1 to 2 hours a day. Mind-boggling, boring stuff, yeah? Just turning it over slowly. It was very limited with the brace he was on. He was in a lot of pain because it's a big, heavy surgery. And then I remember when we started some strengthening, and then I remember they gave us a timeline of when he could start running. And I said to him, I do remember saying to him, "Oh, how are you feeling with everything?" I said, that timeline is going to take us out. How are you feeling with your leg and everything? He says, "I'm feeling pretty good." So we discussed about running earlier without anyone knowing. So I'd take him out the back to some parks without anyone knowing, and just running him in secret. I think it was a couple of months, maybe 3 months before he was going to start running, so we could get it back in time, and everything turned out for the best. So, we used to have a bit of a chuckle about that. And he came back, and I'd take him down to Purwater Gym, where they had a long gymnastics trampoline, and we'd do a lot of balance and bounding work on that trampoline. And then we just monitored his loads quite a bit, so he'd only run certain amounts of the day and certain distances, so that the knee didn't give up. And he's a very resilient, tough character. So he's been through a lot. So he knew what to do. He'd do everything. You'd have your Barneys with him, but you'd get on, and you became really quite tight with him, to be honest. And then it showed, and how enormous he was in that 2011 grand final, and how important he is to the team. And taking it out was a great testament to him and everything, and all his hard work. So well deserved.
Did you ever get any insights into his diabetes management? We've talked to a few guests on the podcast, Drew Harrisburg, and his type 1 diabetes, but we did mention Brett in one of those episodes, and we were talking a bit about, I guess, the nature of type 1 diabetes and the ongoing insulin injections and that kind of thing. But there's also the relationship with diabetes tendinopathy, and was that ever a concern with his injury management and his diabetes management?
Well, yeah, he had some hamstring issues in that same leg, and that was we think more because of the way the angle of the knee had changed. It became more straighter. So therefore, the attachment's still the same, but the length tension would have been different on the hamstring and the loading of the hamstring. So he got this grade 2 hamstring tear, and it tore a couple more times. It was very difficult to manage, and along with that was the fact that with diabetes have a restricted blood supply. Their blood supply is not as good, yeah?
Yep.
The innovation of blood vessels and stuff. So that elongates the healing time, or delays the amount of healing times. So you had to learn to take that into account and try and be more patient with that sort of thing. So yeah, he was very good at self-managing. He was always doing it, giving himself injections here and there, or have a couple of snakes or something like that in the dressing room or whatever. Yeah, but you did have to take that into account, that when giving an estimate of injury return, you might have to add on a couple of weeks with his soft tissue injuries.
Yeah, give us some more personal insights, I guess, into some of the instances where Brett might have been close to a hypoglycemic episode, or I know he's got the nickname Snakes, obviously, for the Allen's lollies that he would have been consuming a lot of. But were there any instances?
I thought it was because of his sloping lack of shoulders.
Did Did you see any? Was there any instances there where he was, you know, low blood sugar on the field? You had to bring some uh, glucose out or anything of that nature at training and that kind of thing? Like, give us some more practical insights for those that are interested in how athletes perform at the elite level with diabetes, type 1 diabetes.
Oh, that's a tough question because he managed that a lot with himself in a diet. There were times
Yeah.
that I know one of the trainers had to carry some snakes or some glucose with them if
Yep.
he needed it. Sometimes if he was a bit run down, he'd go when they came in at half time, he might go quickly to his locker and do a quick blood test.
Yep.
Test it at times, depending. A lot depending on what he'd been doing the night before or the day before. I didn't see any episodes, so to speak, because he was pretty well managed.
Yep.
You know? So I don't recall seeing any episodes like that. He always had his kit on him. And then that was it. So I don't have any instances where he went through a hypoglycemic episode. All I know is he was good at maintaining it. He kept on top of it.